Today we're continuing with the alternate history of of the future. And last episode we ended with the breakup of NATO, though, as basically Trump's faction or Trump's successor, along with several countries in Central Europe, have basically abandoned NATO, and now NATO is a cell of its former self. Also, a ton of countries abandoned NATO over Agenda 2030, which caused a lot of countries to leave as well. Also, the Asian version of NATO still is doing pretty well. We might see expansion in that form. But now let's start. 2030. The year, now we're going to be going to the 2030s. These in the alternate history. A second Balkan War over Kosovo begins. Serbia decides to invade Kosovo. Though this causes Albania to help Kosovo alongside with North Macedonia. Serbia has gained an unlikely ally, Croatia. Over the past couple of years, Croatia and Serbia's government have become more and more pro-Russian. Since Serbia has already been, but Croatia has become more and more pro-Russian over the years, alongside of Hungary as well. Romania and Greece joined against Serbia, but Bulgaria also joins against it as well. The Third Balkan War, Turkey does not do anything just yet. The beginning of the war begins with Serbia invading Kosovo and North Macedonia. Of Hungary invading these countries here. They were invading Romania right here. Turkey, wanting to create a second Ottoman Empire, finally has its chance to seize this. Without NATO in the way, Turkey invades Cyprus, causing Turkey to basically redeclare itself as the Ottoman Empire. Turkey annexes Cyprus into its entire territory as well, and now Cyprus is a colony of Turkey. The invasion of Romania continues as well. And Greece also is starting to lose. They call for help and no one arrives. Kosovo is captured. Macedonia is defeated. Montenegro joins the land, hoping to get some land from northern Albania. Bosnia doesn't do anything as they're surrounded as well. Romania loses the war and surrenders, alongside of Albania, making Greece the only country left, and Greece is forced to surrender. The Second Balkan War is over. The peace treaty will be signed. Croatia doesn't get anything as they won't really border any countries. However, Hungary joined to get their old borders back as well, which makes Hungary get its basically this part of Romania back. That's more Hungarian as well. Bulgaria also gets this land from Romania, which is going to piss off Romania as well, as they're going to lose a lot of land. Bulgaria also gains a part of Macedonia back as well, and also gains this part of Greece in the peace treaty, which is which Greeks call this treaty very unfair. Also, Kosovo gets annexed by Serbia, but this portion of Kosovo does go to Montenegro. Albania will have to cede some land to Montenegro as a part of the peace treaty. Macedonia will be a puppet state alongside Albania as a force to change the government. Meanwhile, another war in Africa begins. These northern African nations collapsed into various Islamist nations, since the Islamist nations declare themselves an alliance as well. Well, creating the Islamist Union of Africa. Darfur always goes into protection from Sudan, which Darfur does not join that. It'll join it. We clicked on it by accident. But basically, these countries want to recreate what happened in Syria. The first goal is to capture the rest of Niger and Chad. This sends shockwaves around the African community. The Islamist nation in Nigeria also helps them as well. Meanwhile, South Nigeria and Cameroon declare war on the Islamist nations as well. The Islamist nations captured this portion of Niger here, including the Islamist. If you guys want to give names to these nations, you can. But basically, this is going to be Timbuktu. This is going to be whatever terrorist group controls this portion of the country, and whatever terrorist group controls this portion of the country. So they also start to invade Chad as well here, but the advances stopped basically here. Also, the Islamist nation of northern Nigeria also is pushed back a little bit by southern Nigeria, which both countries have an equal population as well, but North Nigeria also has support from several Western nations, alongside with along with the African Union. Basically, in one of the two, we could call it the Sahara Islamic Republic, and call it Timbuktu. And I think this is also like some Sahara nation as well. I don't know the name. I think it could be like a Tuareg nation. But basically, the Islamists continue to push into this portion of the Christians, and the non-Islamist Muslims continue to push in to the radical territories, and also rebels against the Islamic portion of Nigeria also begin demand for a more fair government. The country immediately collapses since any new form of government is put into the Islamic portion of Nigeria. To make the country a more fair country, very similar to the Gulf states as well, and no longer a very harsh country. This spells doom for the Islamist alliance as well, and they're immediately pushed back to the borders as well. Well, the Islamist nations, since see no hope of winning, signed an armistice against African Union, promising never to declare war again in order so they could keep the governments. Basically, nothing really changes, except the alliance is forced to dissolve as well. Still, these free Islamic nations still do exist. These free Islamist Sahara, very undensely populated countries, because these countries only have like 12 million. This country only has like 12 million people. This country only has like 4 million people. This country only has like 1 million people. Actually, with the population projections, it has increased, but because Africa is supposed to explode in population. But even then, these countries are still less populated, so they're gonna have to find a way to take over other nations, basically starting a cold war between the Islamic and the Islamic world as well. Also, they also all recognize the Taliban as well. Well, here, Iran is reaching a breaking point with the Islamic government. The reason why they have not joined the Chinese-Russian Coast Prosperity Field is because Iran has been facing this instability for 10 years. now has received a breaking point. A lot of people want to have democratic elections as well. Also, with the demographics of Iran changing massively, only around 63% identify as Muslim and 34% identify as other religions. According to this verified by the government data, and it's probably much worse with 27% identifying as Muslims and basically 63% identified as everything else. Basically, the government is being risen up against by its own citizens, and basically eventually the people rise up and dispose of the theocracy of Iran as well. This country is basically destroyed as well, and hundreds of thousands of people die as well. Iran basically is now a republic, and basically there's democratic elections as well. There's going to be a more liberal and conservative basically faction at the very beginning, and maybe they can join the Western Alliance as well. Basically, this Iran has become more friendly toward the West and the East because they don't want to sever the ties of Russia and China, because they kind of depend on it. But basically, this country isn't a super hostile nation anymore. However, in the 2030s, South Korea is starting to collapse. No, it is not because of economic instability. It is because South Korea's birth rate is so low that the government collapses. This causes North Korea to basically say, hey, this is our land now. North Korea practically just annexes South Korea because of the massive collapse in birth rate and because of the government collapsing. This causes echoes, which means a lot of countries in the world try to raise the birth rates to prevent a South Korea birth rate collapse. China is eerily close to this reality. The North Korea, which still has a far healthier birth rate than South Korea, now basically the entire Korean peninsula is under communism simply due to South Korea's failed birth rate and its failed increase to increase its birth rate as well. So the government basically just collapses, and at this point, after not being able to solve this crisis. Next is the war between Guyana and Venezuela. Basically, Guyana does not want to cede any of its land to Venezuela, but Venezuela basically just says, we don't care. So this starts the Great South American War. Brazil immediately supports Guyana alongside with Peru, declaring war against Venezuela. Venezuela has only one friend, and that's Bolivia and Argentina, as Argentina is Brazil's eternal rival. Basically, this war in South America begins. The invasion of Argentina begins as well, and Argentina takes over portions of southern Brazil as well. Meanwhile, the invasion of Guyana begins as well, and most of the northern portion of the country is taken over, which is where everybody lives as well. Brazil is having a very hard time invading through the rainforest as well, but they do start to invade Bolivia. Bolivia is not a very strong country, obviously. They have way less population than Brazil, so they're gonna fight. They're gonna basically cut off Bolivia from the rest. They're gonna cut off northern Bolivia, which collapses pretty quickly from southern Bolivia as well. Well, Argentina continues to invade, but Argentina still is facing the repercussions from the 2020s. Yes, the president of Argentina did fix the economy and did make the country a much better country to live in, but there are still economic burdens, and Brazil is also suffering very similarly. Brazil focuses most of their attention on the southern front as well, as Venezuela is not going to invade through the Amazon rainforest as well. Brazil is mostly focused on the southern front as well, creating another barrier between us here, and also start to push back against Argentina. Argentina starts to be pushed back against here as well. The war is becoming too costly for Argentina, where it's both which is basically the war is becoming like this. Venezuela, the people are also fed up with Maduro's successor, and start to vote against this government. Bolivia basically just surrenders and loses the war. Venezuela, the people start to rebel against Maduro's government, and Venezuela collapses. Guyana gets to keep its land, and basically Venezuela will be punished for these actions. Basically, Venezuela will be forced to cede some of its land to Guyana, which will definitely not piss off Venezuela in the future and not want to get any revenge attempts. The U.S. did not intervene in the war, but the U.S. trusted Brazil would be able to defeat Venezuela pretty easily. So, yeah. Meanwhile, Turkey begins to invade the Middle East. Because Iran is no longer a threat, and the USA is not going to protect the U.S., but there is one country Turkey knows it cannot attack, and that's Israel. But Iraq and Syria are perfect targets. Turkey basically invades Iraq and Syria. Turkey cuts off Syria from the coast as well, so Russia or any other countries cannot support it. And also Iraq is invaded as well. These countries are also very weak and not very powerful. And also Turkey just cuts them off from the coast anyways as well. And also basically just traps them between it as well. Both countries surrender relatively quickly as well. And Turkey annexes both Syria and Iraq, creating a Neo-Ottoman Empire. Here. There was a referendum on Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Tajikistan all rejoining Russia. Kazakhstan is the only country that really votes to rejoin Russia, recreating the Russian Empire. Western countries accused this referendum of being rigged, but Russia denies all allegations. Similar thing happens to Belarus, where Belarus joins Russia as well. Rejoins Russia as well. The other STAT nations did not rejoin Russia, but still remain a part of the Russian-Chinese alliance as well. However, there is turmoil in China. China enters a civil war, unlike none that has ever been seen before. These rebels actually do not want a democracy at all. They want to restore the Chinese dynasties. Or basically create something similar to the British and Japanese government, where basically the Chinese emperor does hold some power, but there will still be a prime minister of China. These rebels basically topple all communist sources as well. Here, the communist government is unable to fight back against these rebels as well. Tibet also rebels as well. Here, there's also caused the entire alliance to join against the Chinese rebels, alongside of support from countries like Pakistan. Western countries in the East Asian Coast Prosperity Sphere all support the Chinese rebels as well. The Chinese rebels continue to advance here as well. And this is causing major panic in the Chinese government, considering they took a lot of the more coastal populated areas as well, along with Tibet, a lot of Tibet, basically declaring its own independence as well. But the Chinese government decided to be smart and decided to give the rebels what they want to avoid a collapse in such a scale. Things will not be achievable. China basically reforms its government to basically allow for elections. Meanwhile, Xi Jinping's successor declares itself as the Chinese emperor, abandoning any sort of communism in the country as well. A similar thing happens in North Korea. Well, North Korea isn't really a communist country anymore, and Kim Jong Un's son basically declared, because Kim Jong Un died of like some heart cancer or something. Basically because of his habits. Basically, Kim Jong Un's successor basically declares himself as the emperor of North Korea. North Korea still keeps the same type of government, but again, North Korea has been calling themselves basically a kingdom. So basically, all of Asia returns back to monarchies again, except for North Korea is a communist monarchy as well. Russia also brings back a similar thing, as Vladimir Putin's son, after Vladimir Putin died of old age, basically takes over as the leader of Russia. Basically, these countries have become monarchies again, and we might be seeing the bring back of monarchies in the world as well. Agenda 2030 causes massive uproar and unrest in some countries, but most of the countries that opted out have stayed out. Except for Australia, where people are sick of it. They still stay in the Asian Coast Prosperity Bill, but basically, the people, they want the people to do a referendum, and most people they don't like the agenda. However, these countries in Eastern and Northern Europe are kind of screwed. Sweden is the only country that really have opted out of it, alongside of Denmark. But a lot of the, and of course, Norway exited out of it as well, but a lot of these other countries are kind of screwed. Especially in this portion of Europe, with Portugal, Spain, France, and the Benelux, and Britain and Ireland. These countries will be very different from the rest of Europe, as well as basically the rest of Europe just wanted to stay away from Agenda 2030, except for Ukraine for some weird reason. Ukraine's government essentially collapses after the shock of the war. The demographic reality finally hits Ukraine, very similar to South Korea, and Ukraine explodes into several countries. The southern portion of this southern portion of Ukraine, basically Ukraine explodes into a civil war, basically destroying its demographics overall. Ukraine's population declines so much at the end as well. The pro-Russian government gets help from Russia. Meanwhile, the pro-Western government, the southern state, which just wants to become an independent state as well. The southern state basically becomes independent, but the pro-Western state, because of how much Russia supported it, basically giving most of Russia, back to Ukraine. Ukraine back to Russia. The rest are shocked and terrified by this, and claim that Russia is just rigging the elections and everything to basically take back Ukraine, even though basically Ukraine collapsed because of its very awful demographic structure following the Ukraine war as well. Israel finally takes out the Israel's war in Palestine. Basically, this is the final Israeli-Palestinian war. It took out Gaza, but now basically something happens with the West Bank. There are some protests around the world, but Israel eventually defeats the West Bank, and the West Bank is no longer in existence, which means Palestine no longer exists, and may no longer exist in the following future as well. Meanwhile, the Middle East, Iran and Saudi Arabia, alongside of the very rich and developed Gulf states, alongside with Pakistan and Egypt, create an alliance to stop Turkish expansion as they fear it. But they also get an unlikely ally, which is Israel, which also joins to basically stop Turkish expansion as well. Because they know damn well the US isn't going to do anything. So basically to stop Turkish expansion, they do it. Meanwhile, Turkey might look to expand elsewhere instead. Myanmar basically, has been in a civil war. Basically, this part of Myanmar becomes an independent state. Alongside here, these two parts of Myanmar become independent states. The northern portion of Myanmar joins the Chinese Coast Prosperity PL. Also, Mongolia finally ratifies it and also joins the Greater Coast Prosperity PL between Russia and China. No, basically making the alliance to around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 members as well. Yeah, basically further surrounding India as well. Meanwhile, the current U.S. president, which I don't know who it could be, but basically the current U.S. president basically decided to create a new alliance. Yes. This is the new North American alliance as well. This is basically to create more prosperity in the American countries and to deepen the tie between the U.S. and Latin American countries. El Salvador, Honduras, and Mexico, alongside with Brazil, joined this alliance. We don't know what this alliance is for yet, but it could be for military or economic reasons. Currently, the world is on an upswing right now. The only real quote-unquote bad countries would be the co-prosperity PL, but most of the world has been kind of becoming less peaceful, and more expansionist. The rest is the only countries in the world that are kind of still afraid to expand into any world. The U.S. is still gonna expand through its sphere of influence. They don't need to, expand through borders because the U.S. is already pretty big. So it's gonna create the old military alliance with Latin American countries to secure the North American continent, as that's the U.S.'s main interest. Also, something is happening in Canada. This is going to be the cliffhanger of the video. Because Canada basically goes full communist, Canada becomes a communist state, becoming one of the only 2 remaining communist countries in the world. The first only being Cuba, followed by Canada. Canada and Cuba Canada basically starts its old version of the Comintern. Or we use ones as well. But again, there's really no one that could join, as communism has basically been eradicated. But Justin Trudeau's son, or does he have a son? Justin Trudeau's successor basically declares Canada a socialist state. Basically continues what Justin Trudeau did and thus made Canada worse. Canada is still not a part of NATO. This is the main reason why Canada actually left NATO. This will become pretty interesting as well. Canada also has imported a lot more immigrants than any other country in the world, whereas, again, all immigrants in Canada are now basically suffering because they realize they moved to a communist country. Yeah, not very smart of these people as well. Which is why the U.S. created its alliance to basically try to counteract it as well. So what will happen in the future? Will communism expand again? Will imperialism and colonialism happen again? Like starting with the Turkish Ottoman Empire? And will the world go into chaos in its next episode? Goodbye.